moment that put Bronny on trial. One play changed everything. Victor Wembanyama caught the ball outside the three-point line, and the entire Lakers defense froze for half a second. That was all he needed. At 7'4", with the reach of a center and the movement of a guard, Wemby did not look like a normal NBA player. He looked like a problem no one had solved yet. Then Bronny James rotated over. He could have stayed down. He could have let someone else take the blame. But he jumped. He challenged the shot. He tried to make the right defensive play against the tallest, most dangerous young force in basketball. And Wembanyama still went over him. The dunk was not just a highlight. It became a statement. Within minutes, the clip was everywhere. Fans were not only talking about how unreal Wemby looked, they were asking whether Bronny belonged in the NBA at all. That is the cruel part. Bronny did what a young player is supposed to do. He competed, he rotated, he did not run from the moment. But because his last name is James, the internet did not see effort. It saw LeBron's son getting exposed. It saw a second-round pick standing in front of a generational talent and looking painfully overmatched. But maybe Wemby did not expose Bronny. Maybe he exposed the NBA itself. This league has levels. At the very top, there are players like Wembanyama, rare, terrifying, almost impossible to compare. And far below that, there are young players like Bronny, fighting for minutes, fighting for respect, fighting to prove they deserve to stay. So the real question is not just whether Bronny is ready. The real question is whether any young guard in his position would have looked different standing in front of Wemby. Before we go deeper, tell me where you're watching from. Comment in your city or country below. If you think Bronny's being judged too harshly, press 1. If you think the criticism is fair, press 2. If you believe Wembanyama is already becoming the future face of the NBA, press 3 and subscribe to the channel because this story is only getting more intense. The highlight that became a verdict, the scoreboard said it was just another Lakers-Spurs matchup. But the internet did not treat it that way. To the fans watching at home, to the Clips accounts waiting for one viral moment, and to the critics who had already made up their minds about Bronny James, this game became something much bigger than basketball. It became a courtroom, and the evidence was one replay. Every angle made the contrast look worse. Wembanyama looked impossibly long, smooth, and calm. Bronny looked small, late, and trapped in a situation almost no guard in the league could have survived. The ball moved above him. Wemby's body floated past him. The rim shook. And before the Lakers could even inbound the ball, the conversation had already left the court. People were not breaking down the rotation. They were not asking whether the weak side help was correct. They were not talking about the fact that Bronny had actually stepped into danger instead of hiding from it. They saw the image, and the image was enough. Wemby over Bronny. That was the headline. For Victor Wembanyama, it was another reminder that he is becoming one of the most terrifying matchups in the sport. For Bronny James, it became another reminder that his career is not being judged like anyone else's. A normal young guard gets dunked on, and the clip disappears in a few days. Bronny gets dunked on, and suddenly people are debating his draft spot, his father, his future, and whether he earned the jersey on his back. That is the burden of being LeBron James's son. Every mistake becomes louder. Every bad possession becomes personal. Every ordinary struggle of a young player becomes proof for people who already believe he does not belong. And when the player exposing him is Wembanyama, the gap looks almost unfair, because Wemby is not just another star. He changes the geometry of the court. He can start behind the three-point line and reach the rim in movements that do not feel normal. He can shoot over defenders who are already contesting. He can block shots after looking completely out of position. He makes professional athletes look like they are guessing. So when Bronny ended up in that frame, he was not only defending a player, he was defending his name, his draft story, and the argument that he deserves time to grow. But the NBA does not slow down for anyone's development. It does not care about your last name in the way people think. The league may give you a door, but once you step through it, every possession can become a test. And against Wembanyama, Bronny's test became public, brutal, and unforgettable. The real damage was not the dunk itself. Players get dunked on, great defenders get beaten, veterans get embarrassed. That is part of the league. The damage came from what people attached to it. They turned one play into a verdict. They said Bronny was too small, too limited, too protected, too famous for what he had actually done on the court. And maybe some of those questions are fair. Maybe the NBA is too competitive to ignore production. But there is also something dishonest about pretending that one impossible finish from a generational alien tells the whole story of a young player still trying to find his place. Because Bronny did not choose the spotlight he was born into. He can only choose how he responds to it. And after that dunk, the pressure did not disappear. It grew. Every future minute would be watched more closely. Every miss would be louder. Every point would be debated. And every time Wembanyama's name came up, Bronny's would be dragged back into the same conversation. That is how one highlight became bigger than a game. It became the moment that turned Bronny's development into a national argument. The numbers that split two careers apart, the dunk gave fans the image. The numbers gave them the argument. When Victor Wembanyama and Bronny James are placed side by side, the gap is impossible to ignore. Wemby already looks like a franchise-changing superstar. Bronny still looks like a young player fighting for a stable role. Wembanyama affects everything. He scores, rebounds, blocks shots, stretches the floor, protects the rim, and forces entire offenses to change direction. Players do not just challenge him and fail. Many times, they avoid him before the play even begins. Bronny's numbers tell a quieter story. Limited minutes, small scoring totals, some improvement, some defensive flashes, but not enough production yet to silence the critics. And that is where the comparison becomes dangerous. Wemby is not just better than Bronny. He is better than almost every young player in the league. He is being measured against future legends. Bronny is being measured against LeBron James, against his draft controversy, and against every person who believes he only got the opportunity because of his last name. A normal second-round pick can develop quietly. Bronny cannot. Every miss becomes a debate. Every good game gets questioned. Every bad moment becomes proof for people who already made up their minds. So, the numbers do not prove Bronny is a failure. They prove something more complicated. He is still a project, and he is being compared to a player who may become historic. That is not fair, but the NBA rarely is. Wembanyama's stats show dominance. Bronny's stats show development. The problem is the public keeps treating both players as if they are supposed to be in the same race. They are not. Wemby is chasing greatness. Bronny is chasing belonging, and that difference is the real story behind the numbers. The name that made everything louder. Bronny James was never going to be judged like a normal second-round pick. That was the problem from the beginning. The moment the Lakers selected him, the conversation was no longer just about basketball. It was about LeBron. It was about power. It was about whether a young player had earned his place or whether the most famous father in the sport had opened a door that would have stayed closed for almost anyone else. That word followed him everywhere. Nepotism. For critics, it was simple. Bronny's college numbers were not loud enough. His draft profile was not strong enough. His NBA production was not convincing enough. So every quiet night became evidence. Every mistake became proof. Every viral lowlight became another reason for people to say what they had already believed before he ever checked into a game. But the truth is more complicated. The NBA has always been full of family connections. Sons of former players have made the league before. Coaches' kids have gotten opportunities. Front offices are filled with familiar names. Basketball, like almost every major industry, has always had relationships, reputation, and access built into its structure. Bronny is not the first player to benefit from a famous basketball family. He is just the most visible, and that visibility changes everything. When another young guard struggles, people call it development. When Bronny struggles, people call it fraud. When another second-round pick spends time in the G League, people call it the process. When Bronny does it, people call it proof he does not belong. When another bench player gets dunked on, people laugh for a day. When Bronny gets dunked on, they turn it into a national referendum. That is the weight of the James name. It gives him attention, opportunity, resources, and access most young players could only dream about. But it also takes away privacy. It removes patience. It makes every step feel political. He cannot simply be a young player learning the speed of the NBA. He has to be a symbol in a fight he did not fully choose. And that is why Wembanyama made the story explode. If Bronny had been exposed by an average player, the clip might have faded. But Wemby is not average. He is the kind of talent who makes even good NBA players look helpless. So when he went over Bronny, the image became too perfect for critics to ignore. The league's future monster towering over the son of its most famous superstar. It looked like a verdict, but a picture can be powerful and still be incomplete. Bronny's last name may have helped him reach the NBA. It may have made his path different from the average prospect. Ignoring that would be dishonest. But it is also dishonest to pretend that he does not work, does not compete, or does not feel the pressure of being watched more intensely than players drafted far above him. The hardest part for Bronny is that he has to prove two things at once. He has to prove he can play, and he has to prove he is not only there because of LeBron. Most young players only fight opponents. Bronny fights opponents, expectations, resentment, jokes, headlines, and the shadow of one of the greatest players who ever lived. That is why the debate around him is so heated. People are not only reacting to his game, they are reacting to what they think his opportunity represents. Fairness, privilege, legacy, pressure, and somewhere inside all of that noise is a young guard trying to build a career possession by possession. The alien who changed the geometry of basketball. Victor Wembanyama is not scary because he is tall. The NBA has seen tall players before. It has seen giants. It has seen shot blockers. It has seen centers who could stand near the rim and make guards think twice. But Wembanyama is different because his height is only the beginning of the problem. The real nightmare is what he can do with it. He can catch the ball outside the three-point line and still be one dribble away from the rim. He can shoot over defenders who are already perfectly positioned. He can miss a step on defense, look beaten for half a second, and still recover with an arm long enough to erase the shot. He can guard the paint without standing in the paint. He can change a possession simply by existing near it. That is why coaches talk about him differently. Most stars force a defense to adjust. Wembanyama forces an entire team to reconsider what a good shot even looks like. A layup is not a layup if he is nearby. A floater is not safe if his fingertips can still reach it. A pass that looks open can suddenly disappear because his wingspan turns normal angles into traps. He does not just block shots. He removes confidence. That is the part numbers cannot fully explain. A box score can show points, rebounds, and blocks. It can show how many threes he made or how many shots he altered. But it cannot show the drives that never happened. It cannot show the guards who turned around in the lane because they felt him behind them. It cannot show the big men who rushed easy finishes because Wemby made the rim feel smaller. Against the Lakers, that impact became impossible to ignore. Every time he moved, the court looked different. When he stood outside, defenders had to respect the jumper. When he rolled, help had to come early. When he attacked off the dribble, the defense looked like it was trying to solve a puzzle with no correct answer. And that is what made the Bronny moment so explosive. Bronny was not just standing in front of a talented player. He was standing in front of a matchup that breaks normal basketball logic. Wembanyama's body, skill, timing, and confidence create a kind of pressure that very few players in the league can handle, especially a young guard still trying to earn consistent minutes. So, when Wemby rose over him, it looked personal. But in reality, it was part of something much bigger. Wembanyama has done this to veterans, starters, elite athletes, and players with far stronger NBA resumes than Bronny. He makes good players look late. He makes strong players look small. He makes smart defenders look like they guessed wrong. That is not Bronny's shame. That is Wemby's power. The reason fans call him an alien is not only because of his frame, it is because he makes the sport look unfamiliar. A 7'4" player should not move like that. He should not shoot like that. He should not cover that much space that quickly. He should not be able to protect the rim, stretch the floor, lead fast breaks, and punish switches all in the same night. But he does. And every time he does, he pushes the NBA into a future it may not be ready for. For decades, teams searched for big men who could survive in a guard-driven league. Wembanyama is not surviving. He is flipping the question. Now guards have to survive him. Small ball lineups have to survive him. Traditional centers have to survive him. Entire offensive systems have to survive the fact that one player can cover mistakes, punish mismatches, and create advantages from places no one else can reach. That is why the comparison with Bronny became so unfair so quickly. Bronny is trying to prove he can belong in the league. Wemby is trying to take over the league. Those are not the same mission. Those are not the same expectations. Those are not even the same universe. One player is fighting for trust. The other is forcing the sport to redesign its rules of engagement. And when those two stories collided on one play, the image was unforgettable. But the deeper truth was even bigger than the dunk. Victor Wembanyama did not simply expose a weakness in Bronny James. He showed the world what happens when an ordinary NBA dream runs straight into an extraordinary basketball evolution. The apprentice under the brightest lights. Bronny James is not a generational superstar. He is not a franchise savior. He is not supposed to be measured against Victor Wembanyama. He is a young guard trying to survive. That is the part people keep forgetting. Bronny's game is not built on shocking highlights. His value has to come from defense, discipline, simple decisions, and steady improvement. He has to guard hard, hit open shots, avoid mistakes, and give coaches a reason to trust him. That kind of development is not exciting online. A poster dunk goes viral. A deep three goes viral. But a correct defensive rotation does not. A smart closeout does not. A possession where Bronny stays in front of his man rarely becomes a headline. Still, those plays matter. Bronny's biggest questions are real. Can he score enough? Can he shoot consistently? Can he create offense under pressure? Can he become more than a low-usage guard fighting for spot minutes? Right now, those answers are not fully clear. But his effort is clear. He does not hide from contact. He takes tough defensive assignments. He tries to make the right play, even when the result makes him look bad on social media. That matters to coaches more than it matters to comment sections. The danger is pressure. Bronny is not only learning NBA basketball, He is learning it while millions of people debate whether he should even be there. That can make a young player force shots, play tight, or chase approval from people who already decided they will never respect him. His path has to be different. He cannot try to become LeBron. He cannot try to answer every critic in one game. He cannot compare himself to Wembanyama because almost nobody can compare to Wembanyama. Bronny's job is simpler, but not easy. Defend, improve, stay ready, hit open shots, make smart reads, earn one more minute, one more possession, one more chance. That is not glamour. But in the NBA, survival comes before respect. And for Bronny James, survival may be the first real step toward belonging. The internet does not watch basketball quietly. In another era, Bronny James could have made that rotation, gotten dunked on by Victor Wembanyama, watched the film the next morning, heard a few jokes from teammates, and moved on. But this is not another era. This is the clip era. One play can become a career argument before the game is even over. One freeze frame can travel farther than the full box score. One dunk can turn into 1,000 captions, debates, reaction videos, and comments from people who never cared about the defensive assignment in the first place. That is what happened to Bronny. The internet did not watch the play as basketball. It watched it as proof. Proof that Wemby was unreal. Proof that Bronny was too small. Proof that the Lakers made a mistake. Proof that LeBron's name opened a door. Proof of whatever people already wanted to believe. That is the dangerous thing about viral sports moments. They do not always create opinions. Sometimes they only confirm them. If someone already believed Bronny did not belong, the dunk became evidence. If someone already believed Wembanyama was the future of the league, the dunk became confirmation. If someone already believed the NBA protects famous names, the clip became the perfect symbol. But basketball is rarely that simple. A single possession does not show the hours of practice before it. It does not show the scouting report. It does not show the coach telling a young guard to rotate contest and trust the scheme. It does not show whether the first defender got beaten, whether help was late, or whether the entire possession had already broken down. It only shows the ending, and endings are easy to judge. That is why Bronny's situation is so unforgiving. He is not allowed to be ordinary. He is not allowed to develop quietly. He is not allowed to make the same mistakes most young players make without becoming a symbol of something bigger. Meanwhile, Wembanyama benefits from the opposite effect. Every impossible play adds to the legend. Every block, every dunk, every strange angle, every possession where he bends the court makes people more convinced that they are watching history unfold. One player's viral moment becomes mythology. The other player's viral moment becomes prosecution. That contrast is the heart of the story. The camera loves Wemby because he looks like the future. The camera hunts Bronny because he carries the past on his jersey. LeBron's legacy follows him into every arena, every possession, every comment section. And whether that is fair or not, it means Bronny's career is being watched with a level of emotional investment most second-round picks never face. Social media does not wait for development. It demands a verdict, good enough or not, real player or fake opportunity, future role player or famous last name. There is no patience for the middle ground, even though the middle ground is where most young players actually live, and that is the part people miss. Bronny does not need to win the internet to improve. He does not need to change every critic's mind in one night. He does not need to erase the Wemby dunk from history. What he needs is a role, a skill set, and enough time to turn small improvements into something coaches can trust. But time is the one thing the internet never wants to give. So the next time a clip goes viral, the same cycle will start again. The jokes will come first, then the hot takes, then the comparisons, then the bigger question about whether Bronny belongs. And somewhere behind all of that noise, there will still be a young player watching film, going through drills, and trying to become better than the version of himself. Everyone keeps mocking. That may never be enough for social media, but it might be enough to keep fighting. The truth Bronny's critics ignore. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Bronny James is not a star right now. He is not close to Victor Wembanyama's level. He is not changing games for the Lakers. He is not forcing opponents to build defensive plans around him. But that does not mean he is a joke. That is where the debate becomes unfair. People act like there are only two choices. Either Bronny is secretly great or he has no business being in the NBA. But most young players live in the middle. They struggle, they improve, they make mistakes, they show flashes, and they need time before anyone truly knows what they can become. Bronny is in that middle ground. Yes, the criticism has some truth. His scoring is limited, his minutes are small, his offensive game still needs work. The NBA is not patient forever, and potential only matters if it turns into real value. But the other side matters too. Bronny has shown defensive instincts. He has improved as a shooter. He has accepted G League development instead of acting like the league owes him anything. When he plays, he competes. The real problem is that the criticism often stops being basketball. People do not just say he needs to improve, they turn him into a punchline. They use one dunk, one stat line, or one last name to define his entire career. That is not fair analysis. That is noise. A fair view can admit both truths. Bronny is not ready for a major NBA role yet, but he is also not worthless. He is a young player trying to build a skill set under pressure most second-round picks never face. Wembanyama makes greatness look natural. Bronny makes struggle visible. And maybe that is why this comparison feels so brutal. One looks like destiny. The other looks like work. But most NBA careers are built through work, not destiny. Bronny may never become a major player. That is possible, but he should not be reduced to one viral moment or one famous last name. He is not great yet, but he is still working, and that deserves to be judged, honestly. What Wembanyama really exposed? Victor Wembanyama did not expose one ugly secret about Bronny James. He exposed the brutal structure of the NBA. This league is not flat. It is built in levels. Everyone who reaches the NBA is already better than almost every basketball player on earth. But inside that same league, the distance between a generational superstar and a developing bench player can look enormous. That is what Wembanyama showed. He is not just ahead of Bronny. He is ahead of almost everyone in his age group. His size, timing, shooting touch, defensive range, and confidence make him look like a player built for a different version of basketball. He does not simply play within the system. He changes the system. Bronny is in a completely different fight. He is not trying to become the face of the league. He is trying to become useful enough to stay on the floor. He is trying to defend, improve his shot, limit mistakes, and convince coaches that he can be trusted in real minutes. That is not the same race. But the internet keeps pretending it is. When Wembanyama dunks over Bronny, people treat it like final proof that Bronny does not belong. But that ignores the obvious. Wemby makes a lot of NBA players look helpless. He makes strong players look small. He makes smart defenders look late. He turns ordinary mistakes into viral moments because his physical tools are so extreme. So the dunk was not only about Bronny, it was about scale. It showed how wide the gap can be between a player chasing history and a player chasing a role. It showed how unfair direct comparisons can become when one athlete is a once-in-a-generation force and the other is still trying to build a basic NBA identity. Still, the moment hurt Bronny because of the name on his jersey. If another young guard had been in that highlight, fans would have laughed and moved on. But because it was Bronny James, the clip became attached to LeBron. The draft debate, the nepotism argument, and every question people already had about whether he earned his spot. That is why the story became so loud. Wembanyama became the mirror. And in that mirror, people saw Bronny's weaknesses more clearly. Limited offense, uncertain role, heavy pressure, and a future that is not guaranteed, but they should have seen something else too. Bronny is still competing, still showing up, still taking the difficult assignment, still trying to improve in a league that gives young players very little patience, and famous young players almost no mercy. That does not make him a future star, but it does make him more than a punchline. The real truth is simple. Wembanyama represents basketball's highest ceiling. Bronny represents the difficult climb of a player trying to belong. One is already forcing the league to adjust. The other is still fighting for enough trust to stay in the conversation. And maybe that is the lesson. Wemby did not destroy Bronny. He revealed the distance. Now Bronny has to decide whether that distance breaks him or becomes the mountain he keeps climbing. The lesson behind the spotlight. In the end, this was never just about one dunk. It was about pressure, expectation, and the brutal distance between two very different NBA paths. Victor Wembanyama represents the highest ceiling in basketball. He has the size, skill, timing, and confidence to make the league feel different. He is not just developing into a star, he is forcing teams to rethink what is possible. Bronny James represents a different story. His path is not about dominating the league right now. It is about surviving the noise, improving his game, and building an identity outside of LeBron's shadow. That is not easy. Bronny still has to prove himself. He needs consistency, he needs a clear role, he needs to show that he can help an NBA team with defense, smart decisions, and reliable shooting. A famous name may open a door, but it cannot keep that door open forever. But fans should also remember the human side. A young player should not be reduced to one viral lowlight. A son should not have to become his father to deserve a fair chance. And greatness should be celebrated without turning someone else into a target. Wembanyama can be extraordinary without Bronny being worthless. Bronny can be limited without being a joke. Both things can be true. The lesson for Bronny is simple. Do not chase the argument. Chase the role. Defend hard. Hit open shots. Make simple reads. Stay ready. Improve quietly. Let the work become louder than the joke. And the lesson for fans is just as important. Judge the game honestly, but do not forget the person inside the jersey. The NBA is full of mountains. Some players are born near the summit. Others have to climb from the bottom, one possession at a time. Wembanyama may be racing toward greatness. Bronny may still be searching for solid ground, but the climb still matters. So maybe this moment should not be remembered only as the night Wemby embarrassed Bronny. Maybe it should be remembered as the night everyone saw the difference between hype, legacy, pressure, and real development. Basketball is not only about who flies highest, it is also about who keeps standing after the world laughs. If you made it to the end, subscribe to the channel for more NBA stories like this. Like the video if you respect the work behind the game, share it with another basketball fan, and comment below. Press 1 if you think Bronny can still build a real NBA role. Press 2 if you believe the Lakers took too big of a risk, and press 3 if you think Wembanyama is already on the path to becoming the face of the league.